What's going on, my PT peeps? My Walking Dead family, my fighters. I'm One Eye Bright, also known as PT. Don't know if I'm winking or blinking, but I'm definitely thinking about The Walking Dead Season 11, Episode 11 review, recap, things we caught, discussion, breakdown, all those things. So obviously, spoiler warning for all things Walking Dead. Well, another Commonwealth episode. I enjoyed it. It was a different kind of episode, a slower episode, not much action, and that probably doesn't bode well for people who aren't liking the Commonwealth story arc. But it starts off with Eugene and Shira, or Stephanie, that we find out her name is Shira, and she's been playing Eugene all along. And it reminds me a lot of Michonne and Rick in bed together. It's not the same because it's Eugene and Shira, which is kind of weird to say, but Stephanie, commonly called her. The red glasses, warning, warning. We thought Stephanie, Shira, whatever you call this woman, may die, but she's been playing Eugene, working for Lance. Lance is pulling the strings. It's kind of cool. But that being said, it's a slower episode, and Eugene sleeps in socks. You see it right there. But ultimately, this is a funny thing. Josh McDermott did a great job, and the acting was great in this episode. It's just a slower episode, that's for sure. And the Commonwealth is going to be slower. It's not going to be that much action. It's very political, very story driven, not much action until the revolution, the resistance, the war. We'll have to see how it goes down. Well, Stephanie has to leave, even though it's her apartment. She has to get dressed to go to work. We don't know what she does, but Eugene works up the courage, and you feel bad for Eugene because he really cared about her, and she was playing him all along. So he had a key made, and you can see it's 9 o'clock in the morning, but ultimately had a key made. They wanted to kind of take their relationship to the next level. And Shira, being Shira, Stephanie, and also the Kansas City World's Best Barbecue is another city-state shirt that Eugene likes to wear. He wears like shirts even though he's in the Commonwealth, who's in Ohio, but it just made me think of that. Shira says, I love you, back to Eugene, and it's a nice thing, right? We're like, yes, good. They're going to have a relationship, and Eugene has a relationship with Stephanie in the comic, even though it looks like there's no Stephanie. More on that later. While Eugene leaves the apartment, and this is downtown Sonoy, right there. Pretty awesome stuff. Looks up, says bye, and goes on with his day. He goes to meet Princess at her job, and it's interesting because Princess says two things about relationships and women, and they're both wrong. Like, you should trust this and trust that. If she says this, you trust it. Well, she was lying. So Princess had bad advice, which is kind of interesting. Also, look at these hours. 8 to 8, 10 to 8. Is Princess really working those hours at her shop? But either way, Stephanie doesn't show up for the ice cream that we knew that was going to happen from the trailer. And it's a noir, mystery, whodunit type of thing. Like, what's happening with Stephanie? Well, Shira, we find out her name. It's just weird calling all these different names. It's Stephanie, it's Shira, Stephanie, what is it? But either way, Eugene knocks on the door. This is just a weird setup right here, by the way. And there's someone doing something in a bedroom. And it's a big build-up. Big build-up. Like, why is she frantically packing? Like, I gotta get out of here. What's going on here? But she just leaves. Like, Eugene can't get in. He doesn't have a key, evidently, because if he did, he would have just walked in and saw her getting ready and leaving and packed up her stuff. But it's the whodunit type of thing. Then we see the whole stuff here with the propaganda and the paper, the Commonwealth Tribune. And that's the editor-in-chief evidently saying to run this article and do this and do that. And we clearly see time and time again that Connie doesn't want to do it. And this is the media. They don't have a news forum besides the paper. So what they print here, the people are going to read it. So it's a pretty big deal. Connie wants to do one thing, the editor wants to do another. They have to save face, the Miltons, keep the peace, just basically keep things in order the way they're supposed to be. But Connie don't play that. We already know that she brought down the congressman from the Miltons family. You could see it time and time again that Kelly's like, you want me to say this? And Connie's like, come on, say it. But they want to run the stuff from the Masquerade Ball about Tyler Davis, and they're trying to find out more and more and more. We also see that it's directed by Michael Cutlitz, and he kind of has a similar way in his previous episodes. We'll talk about that in a second. But either way, Connie and Kelly go to the hospital to try and see Tyler Davis to talk to him. Private room, can't get in there, you're shut out. Why are there guards blocking the room? What's actually going on here? It's not really explained because Mercer does not give anything away. But Mercer looks on and Connie looks scared of Mercer a couple times here. But Mercer's trying to keep the peace. And I think he wants to control things, but also spread the word for how it is. But he has to play the game with the Miltons. So it's going to be the battle of these two. What's actually going to be written in the paper and what actually comes out. And I would assume Connie's going to eventually spread the news in the Commonwealth Tribune of what's really going on here. Then we see Rosita in full trooper gear. And my question is, why do they have to wear this gear in and around the Commonwealth? There's no walkers getting in. But either way, they do a wellness check. Stephanie's out there. Obviously, talk to Eugene. Eugene wants to write up a thing about it as it's fresh in his mind and continue the case. It's a dead end. So then he goes and makes his own case and figures out what's going on. And Lance is controlling things. When I saw this walker, it reminded me of a Predator, you know, with the hairstyle and the look. And did anybody else get that? But either way, the trooper kills the walker. Lance is talking with Carol and they're going out and about. But again, that walker was highlighted there. The troopers go out and kill the walkers easily. It's less and less of a threat. But the big dialogue here with Lance and Carol was that Lance worked his way up from the bottom. And he knows how to pull the strings, I guess kind of how to blackmail people and to get what he wants. And this field here is a poppy field. So they're making opium, pain meds and drugs for the hospital to really just numb people out and be able to have surgeries, I guess, with the opium. I guess that's what I got out of it. But either way, Lance is doing something outside the Commonwealth and he's a major player here. You see all the opium, you see the whole operation that Lance is part of. Now Carol is part of. So it's interesting that he brought Carol here. For what reason? I don't really know, but Carol needs some story, I guess, right? And Carol figures out some stuff and Lance can benefit from Carol and Carol can benefit from Lance, so that's for sure. But this whole operation here is pretty interesting that Lance actually does more than probably Pamela Milton. So Lance is probably pissed off that he wants to have recognition and he does a lot and he just wants to be appreciated for it. But either way, the whole dialogue with Carol and Lance is something building for future episodes. This was a building block episode. I mean, we have 13 episodes left and next week is 11, 12. That's halfway done the series or the season, which is the series. Then you see this guy, Moto. All right, we bring a new character in. And he's a opium guy that knows how to make this pre-apocalypse. And then he's a terrible guy and Carol figures it out and then he's arrested. Things they are a-changing. And then we see Connie and Kelly again with the press pass and they're in charge of a story. And Connie knows it's a BS story about the Commonwealth being protected by the troopers. And it's interesting because it's the Commonwealth Tribune and this is BS, that's for sure. You got to see some swear words, sign language style, which was funny. But you see Connie and Kelly just working the media angle. And if you saw The Walking Dead World Beyond, we kind of saw that before in the paper with Major General Beale and what they said there. It's also the Civic Republic Tribune. Interesting. And we see Mercer walking very menacing, Mercer style. We get to see some action with Mercer, which I'm going to talk about when we highlight it here. But is Mercer the only one capable of being a trooper? Because he takes out all these walkers by himself. And there's a trooper that's wounded, but it's like, So look at this shot here. And you see Connie's like kind of nervous. Like, I don't know. Should I be worried about this guy? And I doubt Mercer would do anything to Connie. But what happens if Connie is snooping around too much? Is Mercer going to have to do something? Connie should be fine. Connie and Kelly should make it towards the end of the series, but you never know what's going to happen here. Then we cut to number 4. And this is where Eugene lives. I'm just wondering, how does Eugene have such a nice place? What was his job at the Commonwealth? It's not really answered. We don't know his actual profession at the Commonwealth. Princess shows up, and it's pretty funny when she brings this dish that she said she has lasagna, and it's empty. And she's like, yeah, well, if you have food, people have to let you in. Well, they don't have to, but it's kind of funny and that's kind of true. So then she sees the board, the missing persons board, and she's like, so what's up? because she's worried about Eugene. Eugene's looking unkempt and just looking like a mess, and he's putting his whole world into finding Stephanie Vega, which his real name is Shira. So he does this whole thing, Beautiful Mind style. Ruby's this guy, Ramon Calhoun over here, picking out this guy, the bald guy, put 2 and 2 together. And it's kind of cool, but I kind of wish it was only half of an episode, not a full episode. It just shows that they're kind of stretching thin with some of the story, that we have this whole episode about Eugene trying to find out what's up with her. And it doesn't really matter that much. So he's out and about, drinking, pissing on the dumpster, putting out flyers, and then he talks to Ramon Calhoun, finds out the whole thing about what's going on here. We see a glimpse that it's Lance, so then we see that it's Lance working with these people. The big thing, I guess, is that Lance is connected with the opium, this group of people that have weapons, I guess the resistance, right? So Lance is pulling the strings with the resistance and stuff behind the Miltons' back, or around the Miltons. He's doing his own thing. But there's a bunch of story about this guy, and it doesn't really matter. Like, who cares about Ramon Calhoun? It doesn't matter. We care about Stephanie, or Stephanie, then we find out who the real Stephanie is. And it's a big part of the episode, which it's kind of cool, but we're running out of episodes. Like, it's the countdown to the series finale. So this was a decent episode and I enjoyed it, but it just feels like it could have been half of an episode or part of a couple episodes to find out. But either way, it is what it is, and I enjoyed it. Josh McDermott did a great job acting. It just, I don't know. It's rubbing people the wrong way who don't like the Commonwealth story arc. I know what to expect, so I'm okay with it. There's people that don't read the comic, so they're going to be like, what is this? Boring. Another boring. And if there's going to be more boring stuff, boring. Like the whole dialogue here with Moto and Lance for Carol basically to find out that this guy's terrible. The way he looks at Carol, he only works with a bunch of women that he can control. He's abusing them, and Carol figures it out, and then he's arrested. And it's a small plot point, but it is like a decent part of the episode. It's not like all the episode, but when this combined with the Eugene stuff, it's not going to really bode well for a lot of people. And again, I was fine with it. I'm not speaking for myself. I'm just speaking in general. But Carol being Carol, so Carol's acting is great. Eugene's is great. Everybody, the acting is great. The story is just a little lackluster. And Carol figures stuff out that Moto is abusing them. Makes sense because Carol would understand that. Carol would know that. Carol would pick that up because she lived it. She, definitely experienced that. And Moto is a scumbag, but we never met this guy before. So who cares, right? It's one of those things where like, yep, a new character, get rid of him. But it just furthers the story of Lance that he's really pulling the strings here. Then we see 2 troopers. One is wounded, and he's kind of being helped along by the other trooper. We don't know what happened while the walkers chase him. Reminded me a lot of the previous season when Rosita was wounded and the way they shot it. Michael Cutlass directed that same episode. So I think it was season 9, episode 7. Michael Cutlass has directed several episodes, and it's kind of got a similar feel to it. And I'm not hating, I just saw a similarity to it, and I do like Michael Cutlass a lot, and his directing is pretty good. But the walkers are chasing after these 2 troopers. Why can't they defend themselves? Where are their rifles? Where are their bayonets? Where are their knives? Where are their swords? Where's anything? They just made them look incompetent. This guy killed the walker, put his friend in the car. Close the door, come on, close the door. It was like, what's going on here? And what's going on with these walkers that this guy's really struggling here? And luckily he's got this armor and he was protected, but is it highlighting the fact that these troopers are useless? That it's all fake? It's all for show? That these troopers are there, they're hired and trained, but they're not good? Because there's 2 troopers here, this guy's in trouble, and why does this walker have so many teeth? His teeth look too good to be a walker. And then, bam! He's cut in half. Or his skull is cut in half. And it's Mercer. So it's Mercer with his 2 axes, battle axes, kills all these walkers. So to me, I got out of it that Mercer's a badass, which he is. He killed all these walkers without any help. And this guy was struggling. it just shows me, at least, that the troopers aren't that great. They're not that good. And Mercer's the real deal. But we'll have to see what they're really highlighting here. Is it just action for action? As the trooper looks on and he's like, oh, thank you. I was saved by Mercer. And Mercer killed all these walkers with his little pistol on his back. Didn't use it. But he picks up his helmet. And we actually get to see his helmet that he'll never wear. I don't really remember him ever wearing a helmet in the comic. He always has the mohawk. And I could be wrong, but he rarely, if ever, wears the helmet. He puts the helmet down on the hood of the truck. And I found it interesting that the child who won the costume contest is really Ezekiel's daughter in real life, Kari Payton. And we knew that last week's episode, but I thought it was cool to share. So ultimately, Mercer comes back to his truck vehicle and he's interviewed by Connie and Kelly. And he's like, yep, just ask the questions now, but just look at him. He's just like super badass. And Connie's going to ask a question and Mercer knows that's not the question. That's not any of the questions that they would allow for you to ask me. But then he talks about his sister, which is Max, which is Stephanie on the radio. So Mercer and Max are brother and sister. So that's different for the show. That doesn't happen in the comic. Mercer gets with Princess, but doesn't have a sister in the comic. And the differences are here. The show is the show and the comic is the comic. And there's definitely going to be some major differences. We'll see if they're good or bad. Nice little sign language profanity. Looks about right? But the fact that Connie and Kelly are highlighted so much here for the Commonwealth Tribune is foreshadowing for me later this season. But we see Princess and Eugene working together, and Eugene comes up with this whole plan. He follows this guy and that guy, and here they sneak into the apartment, and he finds some keys that open up a case that have weapons. So Eugene doesn't really find much here besides the case of weapons. So to me, I'm guessing that these people are part of the resistance. So it confirms the fact that Lance knows about the resistance and Tyler Davis and what's going on there. The Princess Eugene thing was kind of funny. Princess is comic relief, and so was Eugene, right? So they open up the lock. He picks it out pretty quickly, by the way. But either way, they open up the case, and it's weapons in there. And it's not that big of a deal. There's not like big shockers in this episode. We kind of picked out some of the things that were going to happen, and they did. So yay for us. But the fact that this guy has weapons means that he's part of the resistance and is going to go against probably Pamela Milton and the troopers. But either way, this guy goes into his apartment. Eugene and Princess are across the hall, and they get caught by some old lady that's like, hey, they're right there. And it's kind of funny that this old lady gets them in trouble, but they had to get caught yet again. It's like, how many times can Eugene get caught and bailed out and helped by Lance? But Lance is still with Carol at the poppy field, the poppy plant, the poppy place, whatever you want to call it. And Lance figures out, well, from Carol tells him about what was going on here. And I wonder if Lance brought Carol here to test her or have her connected with him to put her on his side, because he's all about alliances, having people join him, blackmail people, be like, well, you're part of this now. The troopers arrest Moto, and you can see there's only women that work with Moto. So he's power trip, power hungry, sexist person that just is not good. He's pocketing the extra money from Lance, and he's not giving it back to his people. Lance is going to step up and do the right thing, and I guess there'll be another person running this place here. And the woman's like, yeah, thank you. She doesn't say anything, but she's like, yeah, this is a step in the right direction. So then Mercer goes back to the hospital where Tyler Davis's room was, and he's not there. And Mercer evidently had the power to move Tyler or keep him there. He goes and talks to the nurse, and we don't know who moved Tyler Davis because it's not explained. It's not told to us. But the nurse is like, yeah, well, I guess you're not the only one. And Mercer's like, well, yes, I know that he's not in the room, but who moved him? And it's not explained. And it's kind of annoying when they don't explain things, but there was already enough explanation in the episode that it'll eventually have to be explained. But Mercer's pissed off, punches the wall, and leaves. So Lance comes back around, back to the jail cell to help Eugene out. Once again, Lance helping Eugene. Princess is like, well, I didn't do nothing, I didn't do this. Eugene was gonna, own up to it. But either way, Lance, being Lance, pulls the strings and says, Ramon's not gonna do anything because he's working together with them. Later on, we find out. But he's like, here, sign this paperwork. That means that we own you, basically, because you were out of your mind. You're not of sound mind. You are distraught about this and this. And if you sign this, you can't go against me or anything later on. So Eugene's going to be stuck in a rock and a hard place. And then he goes home, a free man, says, wait a second, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. No. And Princess is like, no, it's over. It's over. She broke up with you. She left. We saw the paperwork. He's a plumber. She had the work transfer. She's left you. She's doing this. But she says the same thing, like, if a woman breaks up with you, you have to trust it. You have to do this. But again, the advice that Princess gives Eugene is wrong. Eugene, being Eugene, keeps working on it. Figures out, I'm going to go check this out for myself. And he gets answers. That's for sure. And I'm glad he did, because we got answers. Then we see the paper, the Commonwealth Tribune. Task Force holds the line, second wave expected. So I guess that means that the task force, the soldiers, are protecting the Commonwealth, and we need them, and they do a great job. And there's going to be more and more waves of walkers, or rotters, they call them. And Connie and Kelly play the card that they have to play. They have to just play the game. And then the light's like flashing, and something is underneath the door. So I don't know how the lamp flashes, but either way, a note gets slid under the door. Connie and Kelly check it out, and we don't know who slid it under the door. Again, it's a story building episode. So it's like a building block episode, and it's the midway point basically. Next week is the halfway point of the series, and it's a list of names. So we don't know who put this under their door and why Tyler Davis's name is there. Are they missing persons? Is it the list of the resistance people? I'm sure they're going to find out. It's more story for Connie and Kelly to look into. Stay tuned if you want to find out more, right? That's what it's basically setting up. And then Eugene goes into the Ruby's plumbing building, sneaks around, and he's got the light on his hat that he doesn't use. And he has the spray bottle of water, or I don't know, some solution. Like, what's he doing with this? Is it his chloroform that doesn't work? Just bring a kitchen knife with you. You have him in your kitchen, I'm sure. But he comes across this guy, the beanie guy, the guy with the skull cap or whatever, sprays him in the face. Then he gets kicked in the gut by Stephanie, that again we find out is Shira. They're like, yes, this is actually her role. This is what she does. No red glasses anymore. And is it a big deal? Not really. We're like, yeah, we didn't think. I thought that this character was going to get killed, but doesn't matter. She kicks Eugene in the gut, knocks him down. He's like, oh, why? Oh, what? And he starts to freak out. Lance comes down the steps. And now we know that Lance is pulling the strings here. Yet again, another Lance Hornsby connected angle here that should build for the future of the season. But Ramon, Shira, other guy, other lady, Lance is connected with these people. And again, it's kind of like a big deal, but it's something that we expected, that this lady is not who she says she is. So she walks up the steps, and now it's Lance talking to Eugene. You feel bad for Eugene because he, fell in love with Stephanie. Lance feels bad, but he doesn't feel bad because he said, look, all you and your people have to do is be part of the group, part of the community, earn your keep. Alexandria was falling apart. We helped you. And then Lance walks down a couple steps, very symbolic that he comes to his level, power level symbolism here. Oh, and by the way, Stephanie's real name is Shira, and she hates Iron Maiden, but she liked your books. Interesting that we find out her name I wonder what the future of this character is. Maybe that's it for the character. But Eugene was a writer, a science fiction writer, and he got the nerve to write because of Stephanie. He burns the missing person stuff in the trash can and then burns his book. You're like, come on, dude. They said it was good. You should keep writing. But he's given up on it. Very symbolic. I was trying to get the name of it, but it's hard to tell with the lighting and everything. But either way, he burns it, so nobody else will get to read it. And while he's there, the real Stephanie, or Max, says, Taterbug, that's Eugene's call sign, Blue Weevil, please come back. And he's like, what? What's going on here? Turns around, and we get to meet the woman on the radio that was actually talking to Eugene. So we're getting answers. They set up some more questions, but we finally got our answer that we all basically thought that this was the woman on the radio, and she says it. I'm the one you were talking to on the radio. So it's answered, on to the next stuff, on to the next one, and that's how the episode ends. So to me, it was a good episode. Nothing great. Slower episode, but they all can't be action-packed stuff. Let me know your thoughts. Post your comments below. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Stay safe, and tell them Daryl.